Hello, Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to episode 352 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight. He's Adnan Ikic, my co-host at Say Which Way. We are here once again, presented by FanDuel. Thanks to those guys for sponsoring tonight's episode. If only we could just, talk about something fun, like something neutral and fun, like other teams, are they favored or not, or getting into, betting parlays or something like that. But instead, we have to talk about a topic tonight on this program that I was hoping that we wouldn't need to start covering until sometime in December, when it was maybe clear that the Falcons were on the outside looking in at the playoffs, maybe because they were falling behind, or maybe just because the NFC was going to be really hard, which, like, honestly, Adnan, even if the Falcons were kind of performing a little bit better, this is not looking like an easy year to scrape into a wild card spot. We might have multiple 10-win teams fighting for the 7th seed at this stage. So no matter what, this might not have been an easy year to make the playoffs. But at this point, I don't even think we're going to have to worry about those tiebreakers, because the Falcons seem pretty much dead in the water after another blowout loss to the Miami Dolphins. Rough game there. How are you holding up so far heading into week 9?
Look, man, I'm braving the cold weather. We've gotten a cold front here in Georgia the past week. It's been I don't think we've seen the sun, for about a week. It's been very cold, very rainy, and that's so symbolic for the Falcons season right now, because things just came off the rails the last couple weeks. I mean, that Bills game, we were feeling so good. We were thinking, oh, you got the banged up Niners after this, and then the Dolphins, which is, supposed to be a layup game. The team came out woefully unprepared in both of those games. It looked like they completely overlooked their opponent in both those games, after doing so against Carolina as well earlier this season. And now the discussion has gone from, okay, can they make a run at this division, or maybe a wild card spot, to, all of a sudden, how bad is the coaching, and what needs to be done when it comes to that aspect of the team. And I mean, look, man, I'm going to be I'm very biased when it comes to this topic, because I called for coaching changes back in the new year, like coaching and GM changes. So now I have nothing more to say to this team than, I told you so.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've been ahead of the curve here. I think you were much more skeptical of what we saw from Raheem Morris after year 1. And, it's always dicey making these type of calls, going into year 2, because some guys do legitimately improve going into year 2. But I think you brought up, good reasons to be skeptical. And I think we had some spirited discussions about it. And at this point, it does look like the pessimists will win again. And I feel like the pessimists have been undefeated for the past 8 years, Adnan.
It's a dynasty for us pessimists right now. Like, me and Aaron Freeman are eating right now.
I know. So that, I have to tip my cap. Eventually we're all going to become pessimists at this point. The Falcons are going to turn an entire generation into pessimists. But, really rough outing against the Dolphins that, you can lose games. And, going into this game, especially once we heard that, like, Drake was not going to play and things like that, it was sort of like, I stopped thinking this would be like this layup type of game, and started to kind of believe that this was probably going to be a closer game, a little bit sweatier. And I was prepared for that. And I was prepared even for like a narrow, like, nail biter loss, like a frustrating loss. But to get just completely wiped off the turf like they were at home, where that was like their kind of last bastion of competence, it's just not really something you can overlook. And I think it's really led us to start asking questions about not only the schematic deficiencies that we've been pointing out for weeks with, Zach Robinson's scheme and his kind of refusal to change. It's even started to cast questions on Jeff Ulbrich and his handling of some personnel issues that we have at this point, now that the injuries are starting to stack up. JD Bertrand apparently is going to continue to start based on Ulbricht's comments. Now, maybe that's just comments, right? And it's not actually, gonna hold up. But, Ulbricht said basically they're going to do the same thing going forward that they were to replace Divine Diablo.
I mean, Zach Robinson too, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or like, you just got to execute better, So both coordinators just came out in the conference and were like, Yeah, no, stop asking for changes. You're gonna get the same thing, and you'll like it.
Yeah. And it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work. You can't execute your way out of this problem. And it's just a shame because I think the most frustrating thing about all of this is that the Falcons clearly have the talent to compete. And we saw that against some of these tough opponents that they managed to beat handily. They totally outclassed the Vikings, that's a good roster despite the quarterback position being an issue. They managed to just completely get the better of the Buffalo Bills, which that's probably going to be the Bills stinker at the end of the year. They look back on like, how did we lose this game? And I think they clearly do have the talent to compete, and I really don't believe that it's a talent issue. And do they need to execute better? Absolutely. Yeah, like I'm not saying they don't need to execute better. I mean, the offensive line played one of their worst games last weekend, and there's definitely things that the players can do to make this better. But the crux of the issues and part of the reason the execution is so difficult is all the things we've mentioned on the post-game shows. We mentioned it on Tuesday Takes. The defenses have more or less figured out this offense. There's clear tells with their motions for what plays they're running. It makes it really difficult to execute when the defenders know what's coming, and it gives them an advantage on every single play. It's not something you can just overcome with talent or execution unless you're just literally a head and shoulders above your opponent. And maybe you could have argued that the Falcons should have been head and shoulders above the Dolphins, and look what happened. They got their ass kicked on both sides of the ball. So, at this point, the question is like, they can't just expect execution to get them out of this issue, but that seems to be the strategy. So I don't really know where we go from here. And that's, I think, why we're now questioning, is this the end of the Raheem Morris era? This is where we're arriving because there doesn't seem to be a willingness to change, or maybe there's not an ability to change. I'm not sure. I mean, I think these are smart. These are smart NFL minds. I'm not really questioning that these people aren't capable of changing. They just seem to be unwilling to change. And that's the part that really, really concerns me, is when you dig in like that. This is not a league that is kind to stagnant mindsets and stagnant play callers. This is a constantly evolving game, and if you're not willing to iterate with your opponents, then you're going to be left behind.
I mean, yeah, it reeks of arrogance. Like, and honestly, the entire tenure of this entire Falcons regime has just reeked of arrogance for a very long time. Like you can sort of tell, like even being at camp a little bit, like it's just this mindset of, oh well, we know exactly what we're doing, we know it better. Like these fans are, we know much better than these fans do. And I think it starts at the head of the snake, sort of like with Arthur Blank. I think he is he's pretty arrogant in his ways. He's pretty like set in his ways. I remember at the start of camp, he talked about how this is the best leadership that we have had, and he's so he's so confident in this leadership, and yeah, he's fully like behind them. And yeah, sure, I get it. Like you want to stand behind the guys who are there now, but it's almost like he saw the like criticisms from the end of last season with Morris and Fontenot, and he's like, yeah, like what do these like fans know? And I mean, it's sort of a thing where this regime also cares a lot about what the media thinks of them and what the fan base thinks of them. And you saw it with Rich McKay this week going on 680 The Fan, which is the local radio station in Atlanta. They're not the flagship station, so they don't have to really pull their punches when it comes to Falcons coverage. And basically, going on a 15-minute interview defending what he does and talking about how he's not like, very involved. And it's like, who are you trying to fool here? So yeah, just like that arrogance combined with, that hypersensitivity is just a very, very bad mix. And it's sort of a recipe for, the shit show that we have going on because, yeah, I mean, I mentioned it on the post-game show. The Falcons' issues, they sort of start at the top, At this point, like there's no other common denominator to look at than Arthur Blank himself. But yeah, like that trickles down. Like it trickles down to Terry Fontenot, who is, if the Falcons don't have a winning season, will be 5 for 5 in losing seasons. Trickles down to Raheem Morris, who thinks he's, all that as a head coach, even though, this his head coaching, he's like a million games under 500 as a head coach. It's just a really, really bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a very nasty foundation the Falcons have right now, and it's the foundation for a decade of losing. And not exactly a decade, but it's about to go on to year.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, just about a decade. We'll be there before we know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and I mean this is just a microcosm. I feel like there's just this sheer like undeserved arrogance from this coaching staff, from this front office, from this ownership when you know nobody's really done anything at an NFL level. Like even Arthur Blank, like if Matt Ryan wasn't there to completely like carry this franchise for 13, 14 years, it's like Arthur Blank would be, exposed as like one of the worst owners like in the NFL. But that's a completely different discussion for a different day.
Yeah, it is rough, and you mentioned it. I mean, I don't really get why Rich McKay would go on the radio and put his foot in his mouth like that. I just like I don't really get I don't really get the point of that interview. Like I mean he's like, "Oh yeah, I haven't been involved in football ops for years. Let me tell you about how involved I was with the coaching search." It's like what, like you can't just like did you hear what you said? Like 2 seconds ago you just said you weren't involved and then you talked about how involved you were. Like no one's like this team and this leadership group, they can't be trusted. Like they will lie to our faces, and every coaching staff lies to fans. Like we're not talking about injury flubbing or like these little things in training camp. We're talking about like Rich McKay is no longer involved with football operations, and then he just makes it clear that he's involved heavily in football operations. And like I don't care if he's involved in the day to day anymore. Like that, he's involved in the highest level decisions. And that is the problem here, because he's not earned that right. And he, despite his failures in the past with these very same decisions, the Falcons just seem to keep giving him more bites at the apple, more opportunities here. And I don't know if that's just like I don't know if that's a lack of, on Blank's part. Like Blank doesn't trust his own, judgment in this situation. I definitely believe that it's a lack of trust or faith in Terry Fontenot. Like I don't know that he's ever had the opportunity to make a coaching hire. And we'll talk about Fontenot today because I think the Fontenot situation is more complicated than the Raheem Morris one. I'm not going to argue with anyone that says like Fontenot should be fired, because like Adnan said, 5 years, no playoffs. Not many GMs are going to survive that. It's just the way it is. I do think it's more complicated because I think there's a compelling argument that the Falcons have never really given Fontenot control. That he's just sort of been a personnel-only general manager that's never really had the opportunity to pick his head coach or anything like that. And that complicates things. But again, does it complicate things enough to make you not want to move off of him? Maybe not. But I think it is a difficult situation with Fontenot, it's a shame because I feel like this is his best draft too. Like I think he's finally delivered a really strong draft, and obviously we'll see by the end of the year how these two edge rushers look. But I think so far, the draft class looks great, and that would be a shame if he's finally starting to get it together as a GM and then gets thrown out with the rest of the garbage, with Raheem Morris, that maybe he didn't even have much of a hand in selecting. But let me get to a couple questions here. We had a couple come in that I think are pertinent to what we're discussing now. We got Furball with the $10. Thank you, Furball. Saying, my question is, let's say we fire Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson. Is it possible we still keep Jeff Ulbrich around? Because I don't want to have the same situation happen that we had with Ryan Nielsen. I don't want to let go of a good DC. It's always a possibility, Furball, that they could keep Jeff Ulbrich, or at least, like, they're not obligated to fire him if they fire the head coach and offensive coordinator. Like a lot of teams just like sort of let everyone go so they can find new landing spots. The Falcons, and some teams do this if they have like premium coordinators under contract. They may sort of hold them until the head coach comes in and affirmatively decides if they want that coordinator or not. So it's very possible they could keep him temporarily and then let him go if the new head coach doesn't want him. But I mean, I would put his chances of sticking around at like no better than 50-50 if they do fire Morris. But
yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't really force a coordinator onto like any the Falcons like job is already going to be bad enough with any like new head coach that comes in, because you're down a first round pick already next year. We don't exactly know if Penix is going to be the guy or not, but you have to commit yourself to him for at least like another year or two. So it's like you can't really go into any interview and be like, oh well, if you're hired, your defensive coordinator has to be Jeff Ulbrich. Like I don't think anyone's going to go for that. So it will just be okay, like it'll be up to whoever they pick as the head coach. And if it's a Nielsen situation, then yeah, like Ulbrich is going to be gone. But I don't think that Jeff Ulbrich is like sort of great enough to where you're forcing him onto like any like head coaching candidate, because a lot of these coaches they want to bring in their own guys, they want to bring in their own staff, which is reasonable.
yeah. So I mean, I don't think he would be foisted on any head coach. I think like in the event that the Falcons go for like a Mike McDaniel or someone with an existing relationship with Jeff Ulbrich, I think like if they go with a Shanahan tree guy or another McVay guy, I think it's very possible that Ulbrich could stick around. But I would assume like, again, no better than a 50-50 shot that he does, because it's kind of totally up to the head coach. And also to Ulbrich, like I don't think they're going to force him to stay if he wants out. I mean, I think that was kind of the thing with Nielsen where like maybe Raheem would have considered keeping Nielsen, but I think Nielsen kind of wanted out at that point. So, it kind of is what it is there. So it's possible they could keep him, but not anything close to a guarantee. We got Alex Foster with the $10 as well. Thank you, Alex. Says, worst part is we could start winning again, and then we'll just crash after they give us hope. Did someone piss off a witch in a previous life? Which one of you was it? Well, I don't know. It was a previous life, so I don't know how anyone would know. We none of us would know if we, accidentally pissed off some sort of supernatural figure. So if any of you do know, let it, please, if you could do something about that, that'd be great. But I don't know how we'd find out at this point. That seems difficult to discern. Maybe we need some sort of Falcon seance to figure out what the curse is on this team. If anybody knows a good, current witch or soothsayer of some kind that can figure out this problem, yeah.
I think the Etsy witches are becoming a very popular on Twitter right now.
Maybe that would be a good off-season show. We could hire an Etsy witch, or like a thumbtack witch or something. We could get in here and try to figure out what the Falcons curse is, see if we can do something about this.
Yeah, I remember like one of the like Etsy witch, or was someone on Twitter like talking about how they like called for an Etsy witch to like curse a team or something, and like the dude asked, and he's like, oh, like what team was it? And they're like, oh, the Ravens, and it's like, oh, the Ravens have been like, they've been snake bitten this year. So I remember people were replying, they're like, oh, like someone call her, like call her now. Like,
we'll take anything at this point. We're starting to get real desperate here, so we'll start considering the occult to solve our Falcons problems. After 8 years of no playoffs, I mean, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start considering dark magic to fix our problems.
I'm not dark magic.
Adnan wisely is saying, I don't know if we should get involved. Yeah. I don't know if we should get involved in dark magic. I think Adnan's absolutely correct about that.
Move on to the next topic.
Yeah. We're not there yet. Okay, if we go to 10 years without playoffs, then maybe we'll have that discussion. But for now, we're gonna try to take care of our problems the old-fashioned way, just by hiring the right people. But maybe that's even crazier.
Well, the thing is, we haven't even done that in like.
Well, yeah, exactly.
How many years? Like, when's the last time we had? You can all argue that Dan Quinn was the right head coaching hire.
Yeah.
But that was literally what, 10 years ago, 2015. Yeah. Like it's been 10. Yeah, come on.
Yeah. It's been rough. It's been rough out there. We got George with the 2. What's up, George? Saying, don't worry, Adnan. The sun will come back out. After we get pantsed by New England and Indianapolis in the next 2 weeks, we'll be back on the coaching carousel for another retread. In lieu of the draft, how about regime takes? College football names to consider: Will Stein, Kyle Flood, NFL Joe Brady. Yeah, just we got to put off like the offseason talk as long as possible because we don't got that first round pick to milk. And I'm gonna whip up some wicked second round mock drafts, guys. Like, don't worry about that. But they're really they're gonna force me to get creative this year. There's no doubt about that.
If you think it was bad like the previous few years, like now without a first rounder, and I mean honestly, like that's another. I know you mentioned Fontenot, like, but that's for me even more of a reason to like move on from him. Like you can't mortgage next year's first rounder, have no success this year, and then still like keep the job. But that's just one of the long list of reasons why I'm on the get rid of the entire thing like regime like train right now, because yeah, like it's gonna be rough. Like it's gonna be night one of the draft and it's like, oh, the Falcons just don't have a pick, and then yeah, like it's not good. It's not good. This team also like needs depth. Like
Yeah.
it needs I don't think this team can afford to not have a first rounder right now, but that's the position we're in. And they're also down to fifth rounder, so that's not ideal. So anyone that's like, also I'll get ahead of it. Anyone that's calling for any like big trades at the deadline, no, the Falcons are not in a position to be buyers. Falcons are not in a position to do anything but like maybe trade a seventh for some like rotational player, and even then it's like what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. Like I think there's definitely some compelling reasons to just clean house, and part of it is that we should give the next GM, whoever it is, or if they keep Fontenot, whoever they hire as GM, whether it's Fontenot staying or a new guy, that GM needs to be the one making the calls, like making the decisions. We need to do this the old-fashioned way, the way most teams do it, which is, unless you're getting like a super head coach candidate, which they're not going to do, the GM should be running the show, because it's the GM's job to have the cohesive vision with personnel, with coaches, to bring in all the right people. And I think that's part of the reason this whole operation has been so stilted, is that nobody's on the same page. Like, I think this whole Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix thing, and again, if Penix turns into a franchise quarterback, it's like, okay, then obviously that was the right call. But like, I'm sure like that we all know, like that was Raheem Morris's thing. He was like, oh, I want the best veteran. I want the best quarterback we can get this year. And he was like, go, Fontenot, go get me Kirk Cousins. And he was like, okay, I'll go get Kirk Cousins. I'll pay him whatever we need to do to get him here. And they get him here. Great. And then like a month and a half later, they're like flying out to watch Michael Penix, and they're like, oh my God, we love Michael Penix. We got to get Michael Penix. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't believe Fontenot decided he wanted Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. Like, that's just not a GM sort of thing. That's a coach getting infatuated with talent thing. And like, I don't blame Fontenot for that, but it's like, this is why we need someone cohesive calling the shots and not just changing our mind every time we hire a new coach. Like if Fontenot was in charge of this from the beginning, then at least we would have had a cohesive vision through these two coaching staffs. Instead, we've gotten kind of two completely separate ideas about what to do with teams and how to build them out. And it just feels, I think that's contributing to sort of the disjointed nature of this whole operation.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm with you. Like, I need Rich McKay to not be involved at all. Like Rich McKay, that goes back to my point at the top about Arthur Blank not being a great owner. Like Rich McKay, just like his presence, he was a guy who was fired because he was not good enough to be a general manager in 2007. And basically, what Arthur Blank did after that was pretty much turned him into a shadow general manager. Like he is still like 15 years, or no, it's way more than 15 years. 2007 was damn near 20 years ago. He's still 18 years later, like here, like pretty much making decisions like on a football side. I remember after Arthur Smith's firing, they were talking about how both Smith and Fontenot had to like collaborate with Rich McKay and like, check in with him about like football decisions. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, so this guy was was flamed out as a general manager because he wasn't good at his job, and you basically force him onto the next like regimes. And why? Because you like him, because he's a nice guy. Like, it goes back to Arthur Blank being way too loyal and pretty much not knowing, like, he's not, it just feels like he's not cutthroat enough to be a good general manager. Like, some GMs are like too cutthroat. They're like, it's too much, like Jerry Jones. But then it's like, there needs to be that like balance. There needs to be that medium. I mean, we saw it with Blank. He took way too long to fire Dan Quinn. He took way too long to move on from Thomas Dimitrov. In my opinion, he took way too long with Morris and Fontenot at this point. It's just been bad decision after bad decision. And I mean, having Rich McKay there, like, Rich McKay to me is the symbolism of just Arthur Blank, being poor at his job of being an owner on the football side.
Yeah, and I think the Rich McKay thing, like I know like Corey has brought this up, like Corey Carter and some other folks. And like, Rich McKay isn't to blame for like individual decisions. I believe him when he says he's not involved in the day to day. But what we're talking about is if he's involved in the highest level decisions, like who do we hire as head coach? Are we going to trade for Deshaun Watson? These type of level decisions. What happens after that is like in part the fruit of that tree, right? If he's involved in these highest level decisions, that's what is causing our issues, is that we keep going for the same type of coach, and like Adnan mentioned last time, like Arthur Smith was a player's coach. He tried to act tough to the media, but at the end of the day, he was a player's coach. The Falcons like to hire players' coaches. There's nothing inherently wrong with players' coaches. We've seen players' coaches have success all across the NFL, but the Falcons just seem to be making the wrong decisions or enabling people to basically consistently make the wrong decisions. And that's where the change is needed at the high level, because like, we can't just replace Raheem Morris at this point and think that everything's going to get better, because the last two coaches the Falcons have hired now have both failed for similar reasons, that they just weren't willing to change. They weren't able to create a disciplined football team. They weren't anywhere near as like innovative as they sort of claim to be. The same problems are cropping up with both teams. Not the exact same, but the same flavor. And I think that speaks to sort of a blind spot maybe in the higher up decision-making process, where we're going after the same type of guy and not realizing that, like, if we don't surround this guy with the right talent, or if we go with this type of guy, like, are we just going to be back in the same place again in 2 or 3 years? And so far that's been the case. Like, I think they learned the wrong lesson from Arthur Smith, where they were like, oh, well, he was an offensive coach and he didn't do well, so we can't hire another offensive coach. We're going to go back with another defensive coach. The offense, like, Arthur Smith didn't fail because he was an offensive head coach. Failed because he wasn't willing to change. Like, he wasn't willing to iterate or adjust his scheme, and also didn't think quarterback was important, which that's kind of a crazy thing to say in today's NFL, but it clearly played out based on his decision-making process at quarterback. Raheem Morris was the opposite. Like, Raheem Morris is like, oh, quarterback is extremely important. It's the most important thing. He overspent on quarterback, and that's also causing problems. So, like, somehow we got to find someone in the middle here, but I think that's mostly what we're talking about. And I know Nico's asking specifically about, is McKay responsible for Zach Robinson but not for Dean Pease and Ryan Nielsen? I don't think McKay is hiring coordinators. We're talking about, like, the head coaches. Like, the head coach is getting the coordinators. So
yeah, and my thing with McKay is I'm not sitting here like, saying, oh, Rich McKay is like the only issue with this franchise. My rant about McKay is just about like him staying for too long because of Arthur Blank. Like, my criticisms of McKay are pretty much criticisms of Arthur Blank by extension. Like, no, I still think, like, the day-to-day right now, it's Fontenot and Morris's show. Like, this is them. Like, these failures the last 2 years, this is on them. Like, there is no, all right, we're gonna, completely like deflect this blame onto Rich McKay, and they're gonna be like, out here scot-free. Like, it's I'm at that point of like, just I don't want any of them. Like, I don't want any of them here like anymore. And the sad part is, you're right. Like, because Arthur Blank is making the decision, like, do we really think that the next decision is going to be so much better than this one? Like, I remember the Raheem Morris like hiring. It was, I don't think anyone was like, ultra excited about it. Like, it was one of those where it's like, oh, like my opinion was like, okay, like, I'll give it a chance. Like, sure, like, he's the head coach. What can I do about it? But it's like, I don't like. I feel like it was one of those where it's like the hiring was announced. It was like, not a surprise hiring because they did interview him, but people didn't really see it coming. I think the reaction was like, "Oh, like that's the decision we made." And I think it does also like go back to Blank, liking Raheem Morris as a person and having that relationship with him, and it's like almost feels like these interpersonal relationships that these guys have with Blank are more important than like the quality of production that they can make for what will be on the field. And yeah, like I think we were asked on a scale of 1 to 10 how confident we are in Blank making the right choice next time, and I think you, me, and Alan all said a 3, because like, yeah, like, how can you be confident? This is what has Blank done or shown that really like instills real confidence? Like, where would genuinely, like, where would this franchise be over the past 20 years since Arthur Blank took over if they didn't completely luck into Matt Ryan in 2008?
Yeah, I mean it's a worthy question, and I think like we've seen just how much like a change in ownership, like the Falcons, like the Blank family's not selling the team. I'm not talking about that. Like, look at the Colts. It's a perfect example. A lot of people clowned the Colts owner, who's taken over for her father, and like she's on the sideline. Why is she asking all these questions? Why is she doing all this? Like, you know, and that team has completely turned it around. And she made the decision not to move on from the coaching staff and to keep everything intact, which was also controversial. But I think just a new set of eyes, a new set of expectations can make all the difference in the world. Like, just coming at things from a fresh perspective, changing things up from the top down. Like, I think Blank needs to hand the reins over. I know there's some question about who it will be. It seems like it's going to be Blank's son taking over at some point. But like I would get that process going before Blank is gone, and like we have no indication that Blank's in like terrible health or anything. Like, I'm not saying that he's gonna pass away anytime soon or anything, and I don't, I certainly hope he continues to do all of his great charitable work and do whatever he wants to do for as long as he can. But um, I think it would be wise for him to pass the torch before like he becomes incapacitated or can't help. Like, he could sort of give a soft handoff to his son, let his son take the reins of the team and get settled before like he kind of fully releases. And I think that would be great for everyone. Especially like I think especially if they do clean house, like Blank's son needs to be heavily involved in the next process, because more than likely like Blank's son's gonna be the one making the decision about retaining this next set of coaches and GMs when the time comes. I mean, Blank's in his 80s now. He's not going to be around forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that would be wise, and I do think that they are trying to integrate Josh Blank into it a little bit, who is his son. I mean, we saw it during the draft where he like he made the call, I think, on the Xavier Watts pick. Arthur Blank wasn't there, and I mean, I wouldn't expect Arthur Blank to be there, given that he is a little older, and it was what, like 11, 12 p.m. at that point. But yeah, like they Josh made the call, and I did see him at camp. He was like going around and stuff like at training camp. So he's around the team, and I would I would be very for him like being involved in some of these processes moving forward. And to their credit, I do think that they are you know doing sort of what they can to yeah, get his feet wet a little bit, and to Yeah, it seems like it's like a de facto like internship, like for him at the moment, which is valuable because you don't want there to be a scenario where he hasn't been exposed to anything and he just sort of like takes over. Like, one day he goes from like the not having any experience or exposure to the next day being the most powerful man in the franchise.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see what they decide to do with that, but I do think sooner rather than later, and especially if they do clean house after the season, that it should be. Is it Josh? I keep forgetting his name. Is it
Yeah,
Josh?
Charles, yeah,
Yeah.
Charles.
I think Josh should take the reins and Josh should run the show. Obviously, it's not going to be completely Josh at this point, but we should see.
It'll be Rich McKay pretty much.
It'll just be Rich McKay. Yeah, you're going to get Rich McKay and you're going to like it.
Yeah, it'll be Rich McKay for the next 30 years. He'll be the shadow owner.
Yeah, just Grimmer Wormtongue right in Josh's ear. Oh man. All right, we got a couple more questions here. We got Gathering Clouds with the 5 pounds. Shout out to jolly old England. Nobody calls it England anymore, right? It's just the UK. But he says, how can we still have quarterback questions when we've got Felipe Franks? Why is Felipe Franks even back on the team, Kevin? Why? Special teams, apparently. But yeah, I mean, his special teams play was part of the reason they got down so bad. Yeah. It still cracks me up that like Bradley Pinion probably had like the best onside kick of the whole season and Franks just like dropped it. Just like straight up dropped it right, went right in his hands, just couldn't come down with it. So shout out to Bradley Pinion for that kick. That was spectacular. But yeah, that's sad stuff right there.
And we'll always have that like neutral zone infraction that he coerced in the Bills game. So
the Franks tank. That's the only time we're gonna see that play. They brought it out for that game. It worked twice, and they're like, nope, never again. We're done. So, yeah, we're done with that. Yeah.
We had 2 bullets in that gun. We used them both, and
it's a little Derringer. It's 2 shots only. That's all we got for that play call. It's like one of those Madden Ultimate Team. It's like, oh yeah, you can only play them for like 2 games. Then you gotta go back and get the card again.
I always hated that.
Oh yeah, like, it sucked. Yeah,
that was the one thing I never got into Ultimate Team on Madden because of that. Because it's like, oh, what do you mean I can only have this guy for like a certain amount of games? Like I fired it up one time. I saw that and I immediately exited it and went back to franchise mode.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's really dumb. It's just a way to get microtransactions out of people, no doubt about that. But we got Alex Foster with the $5. Thanks again, Alex, saying, if we somehow turn it around and make the playoffs, I'm still not hopeful long term. They have to earn my trust back. In the moment, I'll be happy though. Yeah, if they make the playoffs, I'm buying a jersey. Like you guys get to pick whatever jersey. Like if you want it to be Felipe Franks, if you want it to be Desmond Ridder, make me wear the Desmond Ridder jersey so I can remember my shame. Talking about Desmond Ridder, whatever. If they make the playoffs this year, we're getting a jersey, and I will wear that jersey with pride. But I think we're the chances of that happening are very slim. Even if they were playing well, like this NFC looks incredibly stacked this year. Like, I mean, all of the wildcard teams could come out of the NFC North. I mean, it's crazy. So, not to mention, like, I mean, at this point, the Falcons would have to get past the Packers and, the Bears are also a winning record. They'd also have to get past the Rams or the 49ers. They've already lost their tiebreaker to the 49ers. The Vikings, they have a tiebreaker over, but they don't seem to be in the mix right now. Like, the Commanders look like they're going to be out of it too, just because the rest of the NFC is so strong. Like, it's just, the Falcons are probably going to have to at least get 10-7. And if they don't have a tiebreaker, they're probably going to have to get 11 wins to get past a team like the 49ers or one of these guys. So, yeah, pretty rough. And then we got Brandon Brass, the $2 says, Casey Concepcion, future 2026 Falcon. Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Adnan? Like, despite them losing this game in probably the worst possible fashion, they're still just 3-4. They're not out of it mathematically, like not even close. I mean, they're very much in the mix, but to me, it's just like you lose 2 games in this fashion where you get blown off the turf by these teams that you should be getting layup wins against. I just don't see a path to making the playoffs if you can't get these layup wins. Like, it's just so hard.
Yeah, especially given like the fact that in 3 out of their 4 losses, like, they've just looked woefully unprepared. Like, they looked like they just, were not ready to be on that football field at all, and it looked like they really didn't do shit in practice all week. And, the Bucks loss was okay, like, that's, season opener, and Younghoe Koo missed those kicks. Missed the, like, game time field goal, like, sure, that's fine. But, like, the other losses, like, the Panthers lost 30 to nothing was just, like, disgusting. This loss was also equally as disgusting. That San Francisco game, there were, like, 15 different, like, self-inflicted errors that they made. And it just feels like, I don't know, like, how even if they come out and they beat the Patriots this week,
Yeah.
how much do we really sort of trust them to really, like, put together, like, 10 weeks of consistency after that? Like, they haven't been consistent at all. Like, I don't think that, this coaching staff is really, like, putting them in any sort of position to be successful. And, the depth is rearing its ugly head, especially on the defensive end. Like, the defense was looking really, really good when everyone was healthy, but, like, now it's like, the fact that, like, 1 to 2 injuries can just completely, like, expose the defense the way that it has, that goes back to, like, a roster building issue, and that's just sort of like, I don't know, you're not mathematically out of it. If you win this week, you'll be 4-4, and you're sort of like, I guess, kind of right there, sort of. Like, it's a really, really hard NFC. It's an unseasonably difficult conference this week or this season. But it's like, but yeah, like, I don't know. Like, if they make the playoffs, like, I'll be shocked. I'll definitely be, like, very surprised because, like, something will have had to have gone, like, completely right, and, like, there will have had to have been, like, a 180 done with this coaching staff for them to make the playoffs at this point, even if it's not looking so dire, like, when you look at the standings themselves right now.
Yeah, yeah, and like again, it's like they're not out of it, but at this point, to get to 10 wins, they would have to go 7-3 the rest of the way. I can't imagine that against the current schedule. I mean, I think they're more likely to go 3-7 at this point. So, it's just like if you like these next two games are two of the hardest games left, right? Like, the other game that you probably circle is that Rams game and the Bucks game. Those are like, so there's like 4 games I think the Falcons are going to be decidedly underdogs in the rest of the way. So you've got to steal at least one of those games and then win out the rest of the way. So that means you sweep the Saints. It means you got to beat the Panthers the next time you play them. The Jets game, you're hoping you can get that one, obviously. Cardinals. But like, there's no wiggle room anymore. Like, if you're going to lose these next 2 games against these 2 very good teams, you've got one more loss the whole rest of the way. Like, if they lose these next 2 games and fall to 3-6, you got to go 7-1 to finish out the season. We've seen it happen before, but I don't think this team is capable of it, and I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, it's like you face the Panthers who just beat you by 30. You face the Saints where that's going to be their Super Bowl. Like, in Louis, they don't really have anything to play for but to play spoilers with the Falcons like they did last year. I mean, you play them twice, once in the Superdome, once at home. The Jets, for the love of God, don't lose to the Jets. Like, the Jets don't lose to the Saints either. But, like, come on, like, God, like, you can't lose to the Jets. Even though, like, right now, I mean, they're coming off of a big win against the Bengals, like a very emotional win. The Seahawks, okay, at Tampa
Yeah,
Bay,
that's another one they're going to be big underdogs in. Yeah.
at Tampa Bay, like, in Arizona, I don't think is a gimme game either. And then, yeah, that Rams game where the Rams seem to be humming along right now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's yeah, you're looking at the schedule and you're like, man, it would have been really nice to beat the 49ers and Dolphins these last couple of weeks, because then you would have that room for error these next 2 games, because the Patriots and Colts are playing some of the best football in the league right now. Like, Drake May, I saw that, like, chart of, like, the best long throw or deep passing leaders in the NFL right now, and it's like, all the quarterbacks are bundled here, and it's Drake May, like, who's just all
Yeah.
alone on
Yeah.
like the top right in terms of like both EPA per play and like, I guess like success rate. So it's like Drake May right now is Drake May and Jonathan Taylor, I think should both be like in MVP conversations.
Yeah.
And those are your next two opponents. I mean, the Colts right now are a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
Like they're absolutely like mowing everyone down, and the Falcons run defense is already bad enough, and they're like having to go up against, you know, those guys, that Colts offensive line and Taylor, like in Germany, and that game looked a lot easier on paper when we were talking about it over the offseason than it does right now.
Yeah, it looked a lot different when we were thinking Anthony Richardson was going to be, the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. So it doesn't seem like they're on that. And my fantasy team's certainly happy. My decision to just take a flyer on Daniel Jones in multiple leagues is looking great at this point, but not looking so good for the Falcons, unfortunately. So we'll obviously see what happens when we get there. We got Brandon with the $2 saying the Falcons' plays are becoming easy to read, even from the couch before they call it. Some of the blame is on the players, but most of it's on the coaching. Can't seem to make good plays to benefit their strengths of the top-end players we have. Totally agree there. I think there's just not really a cohesive strategy behind this scheme at all. It just seems like a generic scheme that could kind of work with any personnel. And like, I think there's a place for a scheme like that, certainly, like, especially like when you're a new offensive coordinator and you don't want to get too far in the weeds designing something specialized when you're already a new play caller. You want it to be versatile. You want to be able to accommodate, multiple sets of personnel. But like, this is year 2, and we kind of expected like a tailored scheme for the weapons and the quarterback that the Falcons have. There's no longer like a question of, was it going to be Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix or what's going on here? We knew it was going to be Penix like before the end of the season last year. We know what our strengths are: the run game, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, apparently, like that his rejuvenation has been awesome to watch. Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter considering how bad the offense is, but the scheme just doesn't seem to have any sort of like tailoring to it or any sort of strength to it. It's really just kind of like a generic offense that's also just strange, right? I mean, it's really odd to like the other team that uses the most pistol is the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, and they're taking advantage of the pistol's ability to make it really difficult for like the zone read and quarterback runs and stuff. The Falcons don't have running quarterbacks, so it's a very, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the pistol necessarily, but I don't really think it adds anything to what they're doing offensively. So that's always a weird choice, but just a very, yeah, you're dead on there, Brandon. So
Gonna be nuts when we bring in Todd Monken, and it's just nothing but pistol.
it's just more pistol. You said, I heard you like pistol, so I got you some pistol so you can pistol while you pistol, So we just get rid of shotgun entirely. It's just not. It's 100% pistol. Yeah.
I feel like the pistol formation is going to give this fan base such PTSD over the next few years. Like it's going to be every time like this team like happens to line up in a pistol or sees the pistol, like look, it's just going to be like that meme of the person like at war, like on Twitter.
Yeah, it's gonna be sad.
Or I'm with you. I'm also sick of talking about the pistol.
Yeah, there's not really much to go over with that. I think we've covered the pistol in great depth at this stage. But we got Dirty Birds with the $5. Thank you, Dirty Birds, saying, why was Zach Robinson saying opposing coaches, quote unquote, say our offense is hard to coach against his pressure? Is that his justification? It seems like it is. I don't know, like, I mean, any opposing coach that's calling him and telling him how hard the offense is to coach against is lying.
It's probably the ones. It's the upcoming defensive coordinators.
Oh yeah, it's so hard, man. Yeah.
Hey Zach, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. It's so hard to like coach against. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Whoever is telling him that is lying. Yeah, they're definitely lying. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, I wouldn't take that seriously for sure. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the upcoming game at all. So, Falcons at Patriots. It probably will be cold. Falcons are currently 5.5-point underdogs per FanDuel here. What are you thinking at this point, Adnan? I mean, it feels like this team is like just like they're gonna play up to these good teams and play down to the bad ones. So maybe they'll be in the mix in this one. But
I mean,
it's hard to say.
I can see that. Like, look, I've paid attention to a lot of Patriots this year because I have Drake May on my
Same,
fantasy team.
same, yeah,
He's been great. Like
yeah,
he's
yeah,
been. I Joe Burrow went down in week 2. I picked up Drake May. We haven't missed a beat. But yeah, it's he looks so good this year. Like him and that Patriots offense. Like Josh McDaniels is doing a hell of a job over there. And I mean McDaniels for all of the issues with him as a head coach, like in his career, he's been a hell of an offensive coordinator,
hmm
and he and Drake May are completely on the same page. Anytime they dial up a deep pass, it seems to just like connect with like Keyshawn Booty. Stephon Diggs he's been battling some ailments lately, but you know he's working back from that torn ACL that he suffered last year pretty well. And I mean, yeah, May is spreading the ball around. It's really hard to cover just one player. Travion Henderson hasn't really been it this season for the Patriots, but Ramondre Stevenson, who had some fumbling issues, has like he sort of like took over the backfield a little bit, but he's dealing with a toe injury now. Maybe there will be more Henderson this week. He played pretty well last week, but then fumbled the ball at the one. So yeah, that's like the weakness of the Patriots like offense has been their running backs fumbling the ball. Like Stevenson has 3 now. Henderson had one at the goal line. Antonio Gibson had one before he got injured. But yeah, it's like this offense is completely like in sync right now. And I mean, their defense is doing, their defense is doing enough. Their defense is doing more than enough on that end. And Mike Vrabel, we've talked about him like on this show because he's a guy that the Falcons considered and interviewed. He has that team just like so well prepared and like well organized. They're like the anti-Falcons. Like they
yeah,
seem to not take anybody for granted. You know, they seem to be, playing up to the level that they need to be playing at every week in and week out. They're not letting, they didn't let that highly emotional win against the Bills sort of get their heads in the clouds the way that the Falcons did with their win over the Bills. So yeah, it's a very well coached team with May, who is right now probably the hottest quarterback in the league, and with a strong defense. So yeah, I mean, it's no wonder that the Patriots are. I think they're 5-2 right now, and they're really giving the Bills a run for that division that we just assumed was going to be owned by Buffalo again this year and like moving forward. So it's not going to be an easy task for the Falcons this weekend by any means. But I mean, like you said, they play up to their competition, so who knows? Maybe they can get something going with the run game. They didn't really attempt much of the run game last week against the Dolphins, which seemed inexplicable, because the Dolphins' run defense is one of the worst in the league. Michael Penix should be back this week, so it'll be a matchup between 2 guys from the same draft class with him and May. But yeah, I would not, if you were twisting my arm and you were forcing me to pick, I would probably not pick the Falcons to win this game. But, this team has surprised us before.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're certainly capable of beating anybody. That's why this team is so frustrating. Like they could go out and win the next 2 games and then lose to the Jets. Like I mean, that's 100% in their range of outcomes because of just how just unhinged this team seems to be. But it's just, yeah, it's rough out there. And this is definitely going to be a tough game. I think the Patriots match up really well with the Falcons. So it's going to be tough. But we'll see. Maybe they'll be able to get some of these guys back. It did, I think Jalen Walker returned to practice today. We were able to get some positive news, like Adnan said. Penix looks like he's on track to play. At this point, Billy Bowman has finally returned to practice as well. Drake London was practicing. Jesse Bates is practicing. I know a lot of people were concerned about that injury, but that seems like it's a minor thing. Storm Norton continues to be a full participant, so perhaps he'll be back at right tackle. Maybe that could be a big deal. Zach Harrison, unfortunately, still not practicing. That is really concerning. And Leonard Floyd's now not practicing, so we just seem to be trading guys out. But, Falcons have to get healthy. If they can get any of those guys back they were missing, that would be huge. And maybe that will end up being the difference. The defense has definitely like gotten sapped of a lot of their best run defenders all at once, and obviously the Dolphins, these teams that are going to run the ball, like that's a terrible matchup for that situation. So hopefully getting some of these guys back will help them, but they're heavy underdogs for a reason, and it is like I think it's kind of surprising to some people that they're only 5.5 point underdogs because given that they've just gotten waxed by the Dolphins, but the Falcons do tend to play up to teams, which just continues to frustrate us for different reasons. But J.D. Bertrand can't start. Like if Jeff Ulbrich rolls J.D. Bertrand out there again, I think we just like I'm at that point I'm convinced like we're just not serious. Like Jeff Ulbrich is also a problem at that point, and like I don't see how you can possibly think J.D. Bertrand is a reasonable answer. Like if he's saying that Josh Woods and Ronnie Harrison and everyone else on the roster is worse than J.D. Bertrand, okay, go sign literally anyone. Go get anybody off of somebody else's practice squad because J.D. Bertrand looks like the worst starting linebacker in the NFL. So you can't tell me there's nobody out there. If our roster's so bad, cut these bums and get somebody else. Like we can't do this again. Like the Dolphins created a game plan to go after J.D. Bertrand, and it worked. It worked great. They just threw the ball right over his head and ran right at him, and it worked great for them. So,
I personally think that if the team wants to start J.D. Bertrand next week against the Colts too, that would be pretty good for my fantasy team because I have Jonathan Taylor on it too. And Jonathan Taylor may break some literal records at that point.
He's just gonna carry J.D. Bertrand around on his back all game, but. So I'm really hoping that Ulbrich is just kind of like he's not going to publicly come out and say like, oh yeah, J.D. Bertrand sucks or we're benching him. He's not going to say that. Last week they talked about having a rotation to replace Divine Diablo and they didn't.
But that's
like
yeah.
It's
like last week you talked about the rotation and then like this week, why do you have to say, oh, we're not changing anything? Like just say, oh. Yeah, we'll evaluate. We'll reevaluate. We'll evaluate everything. That's the easy coach speak layup. Unless you really are like planning on changing nothing, in which case it's like okay, like
yeah.
I don't know what to say at that point.
No, it's rough out there. They got to make changes. They can't roll Bertrand out there. That's one spot where you can't have a ghost. You have to have someone at middle linebacker that's going to make plays or at least be like neutral, but like Bertrand was just an active liability on every single play, and that's just you can't afford that in that spot. So
like me, noted D'Angelo Malone hater, and I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what, maybe put him.
I would. Game sealing interception, D'Angelo Malone. I mean, at least Malone's made a play this year. So he's only played like 10 snaps, but he's made more plays than J.D. Bertrand's. Oh, man. It's rough out there. Don.
At least Ronnie Harrison can, cover a little bit. Like, I assume he was a safety. So it's like, let's put him in there.
Yeah.
It's bad. Again, it goes back to roster construction. Like, this team is not deep enough where they should be deep enough, and it's one injury away from J.D. Bertrand being like the guy.
Yeah,
that goes back to roster construction at that point. It goes back to, I mentioned it, the Kirk Cousins contract, not letting you use some of those resources and funds for some of these depth pieces on defense, and it's reared its ugly head in the worst possible way now.
Yeah. So. We mentioned it, they were tight on cap, obviously, with the Kirk Cousins contract and other things. I think, look, like they put together a great starting defense, and that was one of the best defenses in the NFL when healthy. They probably lost the guy that they really couldn't afford to lose, unfortunately. And they just didn't have an answer. There are answers out there that are better than J.D. Bertrand. I can tell you that. Like, you don't have to just keep rolling J.D. Bertrand out there. I mean, I mentioned Kazir White. some people are like, oh, he's not healthy. He's on a practice squad as far as I know. So if he was injured, he'd be on an injured list somewhere. So, I mean, Kazir White is not like Divine Diablo, but he is a similar player, former converted safety, plays linebacker. Like last year, he was a solid starter for the Cardinals. Like he was making like $6 million going into this year. The Cardinals cut him as a cap casualty, but like he's on a practice squad. Go sign this man. Like if you're saying Josh Woods and everybody else on this roster is so bad that JD Bertrand's a better option, go find somebody else. They're out there. This is the NFL. There's decent linebackers on people's practice squads. Like, go get somebody.
And I am seeing the chat. Troy Anderson, like, if you get one special team snap from Troy Anderson, I said it at the start of the year. If you get anything from Troy Anderson, that's more than I expect to get from Troy Anderson. As far as like, just let's put it into like our minds that Troy Anderson just is not like going to be a factor at all. Like I don't think we're going to see him at all like this season.
I don't know what's wrong with him. They've said nothing about it. He was rehabbing on a side field during training camp, and he's still not like practicing. I don't know what the hell is going on with Troy Anderson. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like it was a shock that he was even put on the PUP on day one of camp. And it's like, okay, we're in week 8, and Troy Anderson might as well be a money laundering scheme at this point.
How do we know it's not? I mean, look at all these investigations going on. So far, the Falcons haven't been implicated, but anything could happen. It seems like it's early days, but yeah, we got one more from Corey here at the $2. Are we sure that the son of the UPS owner are we sure the son of the UPS owner can't coach? I don't know if the UPS owner has a football coach son. I mean, we haven't explored that option yet, but there are coaches out there that I'm certain could be an upgrade for the Falcons. I don't know, but yeah, at this point, I'm not going to be an Arthur Smith apologist. Like it's been long enough that I'll start like being a Dan Quinn apologist because I can remember the good times and the bad times are starting to like fade a little bit. Arthur Smith is way too fresh. We're not having that conversation anytime soon.
What good times did we have with Arthur Smith too?
I don't remember any good times with Arthur Smith. Yeah, with Dan Quinn, we had some good times. Like
with Dan Quinn, we went to the Super Bowl. Like,
yeah. There's positive associations there with Quinn. And also Quinn's like a guy I would have a beer with, like too, like Quinn's just like a cool dude. And Arthur Smith was nicer in person than he ever was, publicly. But
Arthur Smith was a very nice guy. We talked to him in camp, and it's like the whole like him being an asshole. I feel like that's a persona to the media more than anything else. Like this team has hired the last asshole this team has hired was Bobby Petrino. And honestly, I feel like that, again, it's Arthur Blank overcorrecting. And, we know that Arthur Blank is never going to hire a college coach because of Petrino. And part of me now thinks he's never going to hire anyone who's not like this, upbeat players coach who's like, such a nice guy that everyone loves in the facility because Petrino burned him near 20 years ago, and he just can't get over it. He just can't let that go. But that seems to be a very healthy thing, a very healthy mindset there.
Yeah. Yep. So we got a lot of issues here and a long way to go before this season's even wrapped up. But we'll be here, guys. We'll be taking you through the rest of the season. And of course, we'll figure out a plan for the offseason. Even if the Falcons don't have a plan, we're going to have a plan. We're going to talk to you about it all the way through. We'll hope that the Falcons can look. I still hope they go on a run and make the playoffs. Like we want that to happen. Like we're just trying to be real with you. Like the chances of them going 7-3 are very remote, and even if they go 7-3 and get 10 wins, they still might not make the wild card because of how stacked the NFC is. So now if they do go on a crazy run and win 10 games, like we could have a conversation about, do we need to clean house? But the way they do it will be important. And there will be context involved in that discussion. But again, if they make major strides, they right the ship, the offense finishes much stronger, all this stuff, we can talk about whether 10-7 is enough to save jobs. If they don't make the playoffs because the wild card teams are all 11-win teams, it's like, okay, that's not necessarily a fireable offense to me. The fireable offense would be more like, we can't have any more stinkers ever. And we need to put this first half of the season behind us. And Maybe that's still on the table, but it seems unlikely at this point. So, we'll see how that goes. But thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Falcoholic Live, presented by FanDuel. And want to, of course, thank Adnan Ikic for co-hosting tonight. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Yeah. Series history. What if the Falcons win and lose? Both of those, the standard weekly articles. They'll be coming this weekend. And yeah, just check out thefalcoholic.com for any of your Falcons needs. For those of you who, still want to continue on this sinking ship.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And guys, I'm Kevin at Falcoholic Kevin. Follow me there. Check out thefalcoholic.com, of course. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And then, of course, if you want to support the show, you can do so. Patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, YouTube channel memberships. Leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. We'll be here for you. We'll have a game preview coming out for this Patriots game later this week. Still trying to get a guest. We'll see if we can swing it. I know you guys love the guests. I do too. Sometimes schedules work out. Sometimes they don't. Shout out to Believe, though, for trying to always have someone for me if they can make it happen. And we'll continue doing that as the season goes on. We'll get some other perspectives in here if we can. But no matter what, we'll be here on Sunday breaking down this game, win or lose, and continuing to try to figure out what the hell's going on with this football team. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Falcoholic Live. We'll see you next time. Have a great day, folks. Thanks.